Sonnenberg, and welcome to this week's edition of Mind Body Talk on chronic pain. And today we're going to be talking about the role of emotions in herniated discs. And in fact, this is an indirect role that's played here, but one we should definitely not overlook. So I'm going to explain what I mean by that in just a short minute here, but I'm going to preface a little bit. So if you're just coming on board here, maybe it's your first Mind Body Talk on chronic pain, maybe you're catching it live, maybe you're seeing the replay, give a little shout out, a hello, hit the like button. Let us know, have you had herniated discs in the past or back pain? Are you new to mind body science and understanding that, or are you understanding it all and you just want to go deeper with it? Feel free to share that with us. So just a little reminder here in the beginning that this is strictly educational information that I'm providing for you, and it's not a replacement for medical advice. I'm a psychotherapist and a wellness consultant. I am not a medical doctor. I do have a great interest in chronic pain and illness. Dealing with the emotional aspects of chronic pain and illness is where my work is focused. So that's why we're talking about this here, because the emotional piece is so crucial to help people get optimal outcomes. And so today, as I mentioned, we're talking about herniated discs. So with German New Medicine, if that's a brand new term for you, let us know. But with that, or shortened as GNM, what we look at are specific biological conflicts or bioemotional conflicts. And when they're activated and they impact a person, what happens is that a process is activated within the mind and body, or the psyche and the body, and on the brain level too. We'll get to there in just a bit. So what happens then when you are conflict active, you end up going through this, the conflict is activated, you go through the conflict active phase, and providing that the conflict is resolved, you'll go into the conflict resolution or healing phase. And there are distinct things that happen in these two phases. And what we want to do is make sure we don't interrupt that process if at all possible, but a lot of chronic pain and illness is an interruption of that process or a compounding for a number of reasons. But so today what we want to do is obviously focus in on how can we help somebody with back pain, especially herniated discs. So what we first need to do is understand that the emotion that impacts the conflict that impacts the vertebra individual or vertebrae, plural, would be a severe self-devaluation conflict. And I'm going to describe that here in just a moment. I've done a number of videos that you may want to take a look at. I'll maybe put a link of some of those down below for your reference, because it'll be helpful to have more in-depth information on that. But what happens with this severe self-devaluation conflict, oh, one more thing I wanted to say is, in case you're totally new to understanding the anatomy of the spinal column, so you have the vertebra, and in between each of the vertebrae is this disc, this little cushion that helps for movement to be more easy and to have more flow. And so when that's impacted in a certain way, you can see we have some problems. So just wanted to give you that in advance so some of this will make more sense up front. So we have this severe self-devaluation conflict, and the severe self-devaluation conflict impacts bone and joints. So that's why it's the one that relates to the vertebrae, as opposed to a mild or medium level self-devaluation conflict. So what is that? In short, that is a loss of self-worth or feeling devalued in some way. It could be feeling put down, degraded, humiliated. It could also be related to if a person gets a certain cancer diagnosis in a related portion of the body, maybe lung cancer, for example, and it being close to a certain portion of the back, okay, or having pain for some other reason in that region could make a person feel devalued. Okay. It could also be feeling unsupported, not feeling up to par, not feeling functional, not having that high degree or former degree of functionality. Oh, there's something wrong with me. I'm devalued in some way. I'm less than. So you can see it covers a bit of a scope of emotional angles there, but it all falls under the umbrella of self-devaluation. And so severity means, if it's severe, it means it's something that it impacted you in a pretty major way. So we definitely don't want to overlook that emotional, we don't want to look over that emotional conflict. We want to make sure we identify what that is, because we don't want it to get repeated over and over again, because that's how you get chronicity of pain and illness. And you'll see where the pain comes up in just a bit. So let me give you the little chart here. So you're going along, living life here, all right? And you have this conflict, this self-devaluation conflict, this severe self-devaluation conflict, and then you go into this conflict active phase. Okay, when you're experiencing an active self-devaluation conflict, what occurs is the breakdown of the bone, also known as osteolysis. And what's actually happening here is the bone is decalcifying. So as you can see, that isn't actually going to help the structure of the bone, but we see the functional response, which German New Medicine talks about. None of this is an actual disease process. It's actually an adaptation and a functional response. So before we get into seeing that and the actual healing phase, what happens in that, let's also talk about, at the moment that this conflict occurs, and another person may have gone through the exact same situation, didn't have the conflict at all. But if you internalized it as such, that's okay. This is, everybody processes situations differently based on so many different factors. So you'll actually be able to see evidence of this conflict having been initiated and being active on the brain level. Meaning, if there's a CAT scan, what you will see, depending upon the location in the body, in this case, we're talking about somewhere in the spinal column and the vertebrae, you will see a set of concentric rings or circles activated at the precise location on a CAT scan of the cerebral medulla. And there's a map of all the bones and joints, head to toe, in the cross-section of the cerebral medulla that is used by GNM, that's been identified by GNM. And even if you knew nothing else, if you knew how to read those scans with the knowledge of GNM, basically you could say, oh, look, there it is. It must be at, L4, okay, a particular vertebrae in the lumbar region. Okay, I think I picked an accurate one. So I not a chiropractor, or physician, like I said before. So so there you have. Here's one other piece. There's actually a crossover relationship. So so when we're talking about the left side of something or the right side of something, or the left foot or the right foot, there's actually going to be a crossover in the brain when it comes to bone and joints. So if it's the left side that's impacted, it's going to be the right side of the brain on that map that's going to show it, and vice versa. It's very interesting how that happens. So, okay, we march along. Let's say we have knowingly or unknowingly reached a resolution to this self-evaluation conflict. So, okay, great. Well, yeah, it is great from a functional response. I mean, your body's going to go into healing, and it's not going to feel so great though for people. Okay, this is why it's really important to know GNM, because if you know that this pain is actually going to start once you hit the healing phase, and we'll tell you why in just a second, then it becomes less of a trauma in and of itself. Then it doesn't necessarily become another self-devaluation conflict, like, oh, look, there's something wrong with me. Look, see, because you may not have had the symptoms up until this point, unless it's been a repetition, a repeated instance or recurrence of this. So here we have the recalcification of the vertebrae, depending upon if we're talking about one or more, okay? And bone in this healing phase is reconstructed with callus, and it's produced by the bone-building osteoblasts. So one thing to also look at, and I don't know if it's seen as much in the spinal column as much as other bones in the body. This is a good question to explore. But you'll have bacteria accompany bone healing. And most often you'll see staph bacteria, STAPH, which is a shortened name for the long Latin that I'm not going to state for you right now. So Staphylococcus, and I forget the second portion of it, of the name. So that staph, quote unquote, infection is actually the bacteria assisting that reconstruction of the bone in that healing phase. So knowing that, certainly if you realize, oh my goodness, I have an infection, it could be a really good sign. Removing it is not so much of a good thing, according to GNM. Okay, because right now this bone healing is all about re-strengthening the bone, the vertebra in this case, and to make it stronger and better able to deal with this conflict should the conflict come up again. Talking about how we are programmed by nature to be able to adapt and respond to these conflicts with an optimal physicality, to allow for, survival of species, for example, to allow us to be as strong as possible to deal with the issues that come up. This comes up for animals too. Animals face conflicts, biological conflicts, bioemotional conflicts all the time. So do humans. So where does the disc piece come in? Let me answer that for you. So this healing involves a swelling. The healing of the bone, the recalcification of the bone involves a swelling. And that swelling will stretch the periosteum over the bone. And this